I chose to look at various types of music and their prevalence throughout history in the Google NGram viewer. I included classical music, country music, rock music and rock and roll, rap music, and hip hop in the same group. It's important to note I include music on all of these because that gave a more accurate picture, as the terms themselves, such as classical and country, were throwing the search off. To start off, I used an American English search and an British English search and compared the two. Both had very similar trends, with the exception of country music being much lower in British English than American English. This can be a result of country music's roots in the United States and the overall popularity of it in the United States compared to that in Britain. Also, classical music had a higher percentage of mentions than rock music in the British English than did American. Throughout research, this made sense theoretically, but I could not find any research to support why this was. Looking at each individually, classical music refers to the music of the classical era, starting in the mid-1700s and ending in the early 1800s. Yet the term classical music wasn't even used until the 1820s and hadn't developed to be significant until the 1860s. Reading an article by Marlon Feld from Columbia University, I discovered that the transition to classical music from previous and subsequent music was not instantaneous, resulting in a delay of a defining genre. Also, I could conclude that people did not call it the classical era, furthermore classical music, until a later date, past the actual dates of the classical era, for it to have relevance enough to a certain point in time. People at the time of the classical era weren't calling themselves the classical era. It was given by later historians to define the genre and the whole lifestyle as to why it hadn't emerged as a term until much later. Although country music seems to have emerged around the 1940s in the NGram viewer, its actual origin is from the 1920s in southern United States. So why is it like this? The term seems to have been shortened from the term country and western music. And searching that in the NGram viewer seemed not really to help, as country and western music arrived even later than country music, according to the graph, and shows no reason as to why country music hadn't come around as a term until the late 50s. This explanation seemed plausible, but it doesn't work with NGrams. Furthermore, as to why country music started so later in mentions as to when it actually started, none of the research that I found could explain it, and both Britannica and the Oxford English Dictionary give rise to it earlier than it says it appears in the NGram viewer. The next terms, rock music and rock and roll, were extremely prevalent, and seem so with an easy explanation. Rock music began in the 1940s and 1950s and quickly popularized both the United States and Britain, so it makes sense to its origin starting around 1951. However, I found an article that accurately describes the start of these terms and its spreading usage. Alan Freed used the term rock and roll to help music sales in 1951, and it subsequently began to spread rapidly. Defining the terms and setting them in stone allowed for a common phrase to call the music that was going to be spreading rapidly throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way into the late 90s, through bands such as the Beatles or the Who and Nirvana, who popularized the genre. In the late 90s, all the way until now, rock has been on a slow decline, as with new generations, new music is arriving, such as rap music and hip hop, which seem to correlate with the decline of rock music and rock and roll. Following on that, the last terms, rap music and hip hop, gave the results I expected. They had become a new genre emerging in the early 80s that would blow up to be a pretty large cultural movement today. Hip hop is a cultural movement, whereas rap music is a specific genre. Yet I included hip hop with the search because the main use of hip hop is in reference to the music. The trend of the graph follows a smooth pattern, quickly rising up, similar to rock in the 1960s and 70s, as new artists innovated the genre, starting with NWA in the late 80s and early 90s, followed by Snoop Dogg, Tupac, Eminem, and so on until now. And it still seems on the rise, and to predict the graph, if NGrams could extend any further, rap music could possibly be higher than rock music and classical music. Comparing these four against each other, rock music would make the sense to be the most mentioned. It was a controversial and innovative music style that grasped the world in the 60s and 70s. Classical music seems sort of strange to be so high, especially under a specific search term, but it's possible that it is highly talked about by researchers and listened to by many even centuries later. Country music seems accurate as to where it is, and rap music seems accurate as well with its quick rise and sort of prevalence over the last 20 years or so. I would assume rap music could be higher, but that is probably due to its late start date compared to all the others.